from the 33rd team, Paul Domowitch. Domo, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Hey, Domo, always good to see you. Before we look ahead to the Super Bowl, let's reflect a little bit more on what happened this past Sunday, the 55-23 rout of the Commanders. Would you agree with me that, along with the Pittsburgh game, it was Jalen Hurts' best game of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it was Kellen Moore's best game of his career as far as a play caller. I mean, they getting the ball out quick, keeping Washington on their heels. But Jalen did a terrific job. I know he's taken some criticism for the fact that he's taken a lot of sacks this year, and deserves criticism for that. But it's about the only flaw you can see in his game. I mean, he doesn't turn the ball over at all anymore. He's got one interception in the last 14 starts. And he's been he's the highest completions percentage of his career. He's doing everything right, and add the running to that too, because he, even on a bad knee last week, was terrific running with the ball.
Domo, it seems that even at 14-3 in the regular season, people still weren't feeling all that great about Nick Sirianni. If he doesn't win a bunch of playoff games, he's got to go and this and that. Nick Sirianni's done a heck of a job with his football team.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there never was a concern that he was going to get fired, and there's no concern now. Certainly. I mean, the question is, how quickly does he get a contract extension?
Yeah.
Hey, we mentioned Kellen Moore already. There's talk that Kellen Moore might be leaving. He's one of the top contenders for that job down in New Orleans, ironically. Yeah. Have you heard anything new today? Is Kellen Moore maybe heading south?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything today. He had the second interview with them. It's only a matter of time. If it's not, if he doesn't get that job, next year he's going to be at the top of lists. The only guy that's safe is Fangio. I mean, Vic doesn't want to go anywhere. He's happy here. His hometown at Dunmore, PA, is right up the Northeast Extension, so he's happy to finish his career here, and they're lucky to have him.
How about Jeff Stoutland and the offensive line? Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier before you were with us. They have to plug and play with Juergens out. They moved Dickerson over. Steen looks like he played really well, other than maybe one blown communication they had there. They end up subbing around, and they just all play well.
Yeah, Stoutland, I'm convinced they could plug in anybody at this point, and they're going to be ready to play because of the way he prepares them. I mean, he knows that everybody's an injury away from them having to go to next man up. Steen's been a great versatile guy to move, to use. I think Dickerson's going to try to play, from what I understand. I don't know how that knee is. I mean, you watched him on the sideline on Sunday. Man, he looked like he was in major pain. Cam Juergens is still nursing a back injury. But they've got 2 weeks to rehab and get treated. So at least at kickoff, both of them will be in the starting lineup as far as I can see.
Going over to the other side of the ball again, Vic Fangio's defense. Now, what a turnaround this year, from down near the bottom last year to number one in the league this year. You had Zach Bond coming out of nowhere, New Orleans, actually. Nolan Smith, who was maybe looking like a bust as a rookie, and now he's doing great in the postseason. You have the rookie cornerbacks, Oren Burks filling in. They could do no wrong defensively lately.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Fangio, obviously. He's probably, next to Jimmy Johnson, I have not been around a better defensive coach in my career. How he's brought in a lot of guys through the draft and free agency that have helped make this turnaround, but Vic's made it work. I mean, these guys, when you look at last year, all the communications breakdowns they would have, and the blown coverages. This unit just seems to play as one. There's, no matter who they, plug in. Nakobe Dean gets hurt and they put in Burks, like you mentioned. Burks is Nakobe Dean, but he's doing a good job. He's doing a solid job. And they just, those two corners are just phenomenal. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell is just terrific. I mean, he's a defensive rookie of the year candidate, and Cooper DeJean should be. I mean, the job he's done at slot corner has just been amazing. And, you saw it last week. I mean, he busts through screens and breaks them up. He does everything right. He may be in my mind one of the top 2 or 3 slot corners in the league right now.
Yeah, and how about the front? Let's talk about them as well. Jalen Carter playing just lights out. I was telling Chet I needed to double check this because I couldn't believe it. But the place I always look for my stats had Jalen Carter not on the stat sheet. No tackles, no assists, but he played a heck of a football game.
Oh yeah, I mean he's constantly double teamed. I co-host a radio show on WBCB on Monday nights with Paul Jolovitz, and we had a couple of weeks ago we had Dick Vermeil on. Dick Vermeil compared Jalen to Reggie White. I'm not saying he wasn't saying he's as good as Reggie was yet, but that he's that kind of disruptive force on a defensive line, and you see it every week. I mean, if he's not making the play, he's allowing it to happen because of the attention they've got to give him. Last week against Washington, Jordan Davis probably stepped up and had his best game of his career. That big sack on Daniels when Daniels tried to spin away from him, and he just grabs him with his paw and kind of says, "You're not going anywhere."
Yeah.
So
speaking of Carter, I mean, excuse me, man. Did you see where Aaron Donald said it's time to pass the torch from Aaron Donald to Jalen Carter? That's high praise as well.
It sure is. I mean, he's just, my concern when they drafted him, Bill, was maturity. I mean, I had no questions about his talent. No scout did. I mean, he dropped to, I think they got him at 9. They moved up a couple spots to pick him at 9, but that was after the car accident and some of the other things that happened during his college career. What I've seen this year from him, just personality-wise, seems to, he seems to be maturing, and that's the key for him. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that's going to stop him from being one of the best defensive tackles in this league, if not the best, as long as he doesn't cause himself to have problems.
Let me ask you about Nolan Smith, who I mentioned previously. As I said, he looked kind of ho-hum his rookie year. This year, he's been terrific. Is that the effect of Vic Fangio? Is it just maturing on his part, or what?
Vic's probably had a lot to do with it, but I think also it's just him having a year in the NFL. I think he only played 150 snaps on defense as a rookie. This year he's just taken off. I don't know if he's gained any weight, but he's just been he's stronger, faster. He's just amazing. I mean, the way he chased down Daniels on that one sack, I think he's got I want to say 8 sacks in the last 7 games, something like that, going back to the regular season. I mean, and they've needed it. When Brandon Graham went down, they don't have a lot of depth at on the edge. They're deeper inside than they are on the outside. And, he stepped up in a big way, and so did the rookie from Houston Christian, LIX Hunt. I mean, who expected that? Yeah. And now he's a guy that's in a regular rotation.
Well, we've talked about most guys. Let's get to the big one, number 26. You've watched a lot of running backs in your time, 1,000 over your years. Have you ever seen a season quite like what this guy's put together?
No, I haven't, Bill. Admittedly, when they signed him, I'm thinking, okay, what's the purpose here? You're overpaying a 27-year-old guy with an injury history. I mean, this is a big gamble, and Howie over the last 6-7 years had not been a guy. They never paid any rookie they drafted like Miles Sanders. They didn't give him a second contract. They always felt, I mean, it was kind of the tendency around the whole league over the last 5 years has been not so much that they've devalued running back, but that you can always find one. Like Kansas City did a few years back with Isaiah Pacheco when they got him in the 7th round, and he helped beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So, I wondered about the wisdom of paying Saquon all that money, and then I watched him play, and then I worried, okay, you're overusing him. He's going to be toast by the playoffs, and we get to the playoffs, and he ain't toast. He might break John Riggins's playoff rushing record with a big game against Kansas City. So he's just been phenomenal. I mean, you put him behind that line. I mean, that should be illegal. The holes they're opening for him. It's fun to watch.
Well, we got Super Bowl 59 coming up in a week and a half, of course, a rematch from 2 years ago. How is this matchup different from 2 years ago? What has changed most notably from Super Bowl 57?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kansas City this year, and no one was terribly impressed by them, even though they only lost, 2 games? One game? I forget. They won 16 games by 1 score. I mean, they never blew anybody out. You look at their roster. I think the Eagles are more talented than them right now. But they've got Patrick Mahomes, and the Eagles don't. They've got Jalen, and he's a terrific quarterback. But Mahomes seems to be, there's a reason they've been to 7 straight conference championship games and are trying to three-peat here. I mean, he's just probably the best quarterback we've seen since Brady. But I think this defense can contain him enough. Not allow a lot of big plays. I don't think they want to let this game come down to the end, a 1-score game, especially with when you've got a kicker you can't trust anymore. But I just feel a lot more confident about the Eagles' chances of beating them this time than 3 years ago or 3 years ago. Yeah, but and even then, that game came down to the end. So it just right now they're playing so well, and the difference is that defense is just there's no. I mean, they've contained great quarterbacks this year. There's nobody that's like torched them. No team with great wide receivers, including the Rams, who have got Cooper Kupp and Nakua. I mean, they handled them well. I mean, they got their catches, but they didn't beat them. And so the Chiefs don't have any great wide receivers. They've got Hollywood Brown. I like the rookie Xavier Worthy, but I mean, I'll put Quinyon Mitchell on anybody and be confident that he can stop them. Travis Kelce's got a lot of catches this year, but he's averaging a career low in yards per catch. He's only got 3 touchdowns. So I mean, if they'll let Mahomes play, 5 yards passes to Kelce and try to stop him that way or hold him to field goals. And as far as one of the big matchups in my mind is going to be Steve Spagnuolo's defense against Jalen and that offense. They're going to blitz him. I mean, I think they had the 5th highest blitz percentage in the league this year. And, but Jalen's been much better against the blitz this year than he was last year. I think they'll probably do a lot of what they did last week against Washington, guys, and get the ball out quickly and rely on Saquon. And I don't see Kansas City being able to shut him down.
Yeah, you went right where I was going to go, Paul. I was thinking Kansas City, to me, this year is better defensively than they are offensively. That
Right.
hasn't been the case in the last few years. But just like at the end of that Buffalo game, all of a sudden Spagnuolo comes up with a corner blitz where that thing come from that makes the play to save the game. Yeah. And you would have never thought that was coming. And that's where Jalen and the audibles and so forth, which he's done a great job with, he's going to have to be on top of his game.
Yeah. I mean, we can't have a 7-sack game like they got away with, in the first playoff game. And that's why I think, I mean, they're going to – Kellen Moore's going to have him ready to get that ball out. And he's going to have – you saw a lot of times on Sunday, I mean, Barkley would just go over to the side if he wasn't involved. Instead of using him as a blocker, he was there if they needed to dump the ball off so that they could avoid the sack. So I think we'll see a lot of that. The other thing we didn't talk about, guys, the turnovers. I mean, they've got a +10 turnover differential. That's unheard of. They haven't turned it over a single time, and they've taken it away 10 times in their 3 playoff games. Now, the Chiefs don't turn it over a lot, but they haven't played this defense. So, it's going to be interesting to see whether they can force a couple turnovers off of, out of Mahomes and the rest of that offense.
And, of course, the Hurts fumble in Super Bowl 57 a couple of years ago, one of the key plays of that game. Yeah. Travis Kelce, you mentioned him. We just saw Zach Ertz, who's, 34, 35 years old now, with 11 catches against the Eagles. Does that portend, Travis Kelce having a big day as well in Super Bowl 59?
It could. He's been – you look at his numbers this year. I mean, he had 97 catches. But they've come in some games he's got like 12 catches, most of them clearly the defense is going to have to decide what to focus on. I don't think they're afraid of Travis Kelce like they were 3 years ago. I think they respect him tremendously. They know that Mahomes is going to look for him, but they're okay with that as long as they don't allow him a lot of yards after the catch. This defense has – I think it gave up 5 touchdowns to tight ends this year, none to running backs. But most of those, a couple of Zach Ertz had one in the first Washington game, in garbage time and things like that. I mean, they have not been a couple of years back. They couldn't stop a good tight end to save their life. Now I think it's their choice. They'll let tight ends, they'll let anybody catch the ball for 5 yards. They'll try not to give them too many first downs. So, it's going to be an interesting matchup, especially without Nakobe Dean. We'll see a lot of Burks on him, I guess, and a lot of Reed Blankenship. But I like their chances against him as far as him doing any real damage.
Well, and I think another important part of this game for the Eagles is you can't leave it close towards the end. Exactly. Things always seem to go the Chiefs' way for whatever reason. We won't go into all that, but for whatever reason, the ball seems to bounce their way at the end. They need to be able to get enough of a cushion that we're not playing down to the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I mean, besides the Mahomes factor, Kansas City's won so many of those games, they just believe they can find a way, and they usually do. And again, but another concern of mine is we talked about it earlier when I mentioned the kicker. Jake Elliott's confidence level right now is not great. I'm okay with him out there for a 30-something yard field goal. If they can't push it in the red zone, but I don't want this game to come down to him needing to make a 50-yard field goal because I don't think he can anymore. It's not leg strength. It's just mechanics and confidence. We saw in that 54-yarder last week, that ball just tailed right from the beginning. That was not it was never gonna. You knew right from the beginning that it wasn't going to go in, and so I don't. I thought at one point 6-7 weeks ago that they might think about bringing somebody onto the practice squad, another kicker, and then make a decision at some point. Now it's too late to do that. It's sink or swim with Jake. So if you're the Eagles, you try to win the game like you did last week. Just pile up the points, have your defense. I think the Eagles can score in the 30s on this Chiefs defense. The question is, what's Kansas City going to put up? So you don't want it to become a close game, guys.
Hey, Dom, last thing for me, we're pretty much out of time here. A lot of talk on the radio yesterday and today is if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles win this game, and he plays well, is he all of a sudden considered the best quarterback in Eagles history?
Yeah, taking them to 2 Super Bowls,
4 straight playoff appearances, 2 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl win.
Quarterbacks are in this league are generally measured by Super Bowl championships. And I don't feel that's often fair because this is the ultimate team game. But I have a lot of confidence in this guy. He's not. I think Nick put it after the game on Sunday, I forget his quote. It was like he was referring to Jalen as much as he was the team. He said it's not like you envision it to be, meaning that the offense doesn't run. They're basically a run-oriented offense, but the Jalen doesn't. He's not a guy you look at and say, wow, what a great passer, even though his numbers are terrific. But when you throw in the running game, I mean, that's what so many quarterbacks, like CJ Stroud, all these guys, the ability to add running to it is so important when you evaluate them.
Well, Domo, before we let you go, let everyone know where they can find your show, your writings, and everything you got going on.
Yeah, WBCB, Monday nights, 6:00. We do the show from the Great American Pub in Conshohocken. So you can go down there and mingle with our guest. This week, I think it's going to be Sean Landetta, the former Eagle and Philadelphia Star. Everybody's welcome to come on down there, or they can listen to it and on WBCBsports.com anytime they want.
All right. Good deal. Well, Domo, as always, we appreciate you doing this with us, and let's talk again after we're Super Bowl champions.
You bet. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Paul.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks.